What if I told you that just minutes ago, Buckingham Palace dropped a bombshell no one expected, and it wasn't a statement, a press release, or a carefully worded royal rebuttal? No, it was footage, raw, unedited, released under the direct command of King Charles III himself. And in this footage, Meghan Markle, not waving, not smiling, but allegedly caught in the act. Let that sink in. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. Now ask yourself this: why now? Why would the royal family, known for generations of silence, secrets, and keeping dirty laundry firmly behind palace walls, suddenly go public with something so damning, so shocking, that it left even the most seasoned royal correspondents scrambling for words? And more importantly, what did Meghan Markle do that left the king with no other choice but to go nuclear? Because make no mistake, this isn't about family drama anymore. This is about money, royal money, public money, and the trust that holds a 1,000-year-old institution together, now hanging by a thread. And Meghan? According to insiders, she went absolutely ballistic when she found out. But let's rewind, because the palace didn't just wake up this morning and drop this footage by accident. This has been building quietly, secretly, for months, maybe years. Think about it. We've seen growing tensions between the Sussexes and the crown. Rumors, whispers, leaks, financial audits that didn't quite add up, travel expenses that went unexplained, and allegations that some internal royal assets had disappeared, quietly, without a trace. The tabloids dismissed it as noise. The internet chalked it up to jealousy. But behind the scenes, King Charles was reportedly furious and patient, watching, gathering, until now. Because the footage that was just released doesn't just show a moment, it shows a pattern, a glimpse behind the polished curtain, a glimpse of a duchess allegedly using her access, her title, her proximity to the throne, not to serve, but to extract, to take. And the timing of its release, just as Meghan was reportedly preparing another media appearance, couldn't be more pointed. Can you feel the shift? This isn't palace gossip anymore. This is war. And here's where it gets truly wild. This footage, insiders claim, isn't from paparazzi drones or whistleblowers. It came from inside the palace. Internal surveillance, archival security logs, possibly even financial security staff who were alarmed at what they saw, but told to keep quiet. Until the order came down from the very top, from the king. Let's be clear. This isn't just about Meghan. This is about control. About a monarch reasserting his authority. About the royal family drawing a line in the sand. And Meghan? According to multiple reports, she didn't take it well. Screaming, phone calls, legal threats, a full-scale meltdown, just moments after the footage went live. But you haven't even seen the worst of it yet. Because the real story isn't just the footage itself, it's what the footage was cross-referenced with. A financial trail that leads straight into the heart of royal funds that were supposed to be untouchable. And when those two elements came together, that's when everything changed. So buckle up, because in the next few minutes, we're diving deep into what the footage actually shows, how the money was allegedly misappropriated, and why King Charles made the explosive decision to make it all public. Because once you understand where the money went, everything changes. And the first clue? Well, it's buried in footage that was never meant to see the light of day. Have you ever seen something you weren't supposed to see, and suddenly, everything made sense? That's what this footage is. A quiet hallway, dim lighting, no sound, just time-stamped surveillance footage deep inside one of the less glamorous wings of Buckingham Palace. The kind of area only senior staff and inner circle royals would ever step foot in. Not the grand ballrooms. Not the balcony. No photographers. Just cold stone, heavy doors, and security cameras that most people forget exist. Until now. The clip begins innocently enough. Meghan Markle walking briskly down the corridor. Alone. No assistants. No entourage. But what happens next caught even the palace off guard. At precisely 2:13 a.m., Meghan is seen unlocking a restricted archival room with a key fob, one typically assigned to senior staff, not family. She looks over her shoulder. Not once, but twice, and then disappears inside. For 7 minutes, she's out of frame. Then she reemerges, carrying what appears to be a folder. Thick, clasped shut. She tucks it under her coat, walks out, calm, controlled, gone. You might ask, okay, but that's not proof of theft, right? That's exactly what made this footage so complicated. It wasn't what it showed, it's what it didn't show. There was no confrontation, no alarm triggered, just an unscheduled, undocumented visit to a room tied to internal financial record keeping. Here's where it gets weird. That same week, Palace accountants flagged a discrepancy in archived financial records connected to the Royal Foundation's budget transfers, specifically, charitable earmarks never arriving at their destination. They suspected a clerical error, until the timestamps aligned, until they realized the file Meghan took was the same one that mysteriously vanished from their ledgers. Now ask yourself this. How many times had this happened before? Because this wasn't paparazzi material. This wasn't leaked by Meghan's enemies. This was buried in the palace's own system, in a digital vault, locked, forgotten, until King Charles demanded a review of all internal logs connected to fund misplacement inquiries. That's when they found it. And the king? He didn't call lawyers. He didn't leak it to the press. He gave the order himself. Release it. Let the world see. Sources say courtiers were stunned. Some protested. Others begged him to reconsider. But Charles was resolute. No more silence, he reportedly said. Not this time. But here's what they didn't expect. When the footage was released and Meghan saw it, her reaction was nothing short of explosive. And it wasn't just about being caught. Because the footage was only part of the story. What it connected to next pulled the curtain back on something far more damning. And it wasn't just about what Meghan allegedly took. It was about where it ended up. And what came next would change everything. And no one saw it coming. So here's the question no one wanted to ask out loud. If the footage showed access, where did the money actually go? Because this is where rumors die and records start talking. What palace investigators uncovered next didn't come from gossip blogs or anonymous leaks. It came from spreadsheets, transfer logs, audit trails, the kind of boring paperwork that destroys lives when it lines up too perfectly. And when analysts overlaid the timestamps from the footage with internal financial movements, something chilling appeared. Small amounts at first, then larger ones. Not one dramatic withdrawal, but a drip. Slow, careful, almost invisible. Funds earmarked for specific royal initiatives and charitable channels, quietly rerouted. Not missing in a way that screams theft, but misplaced in a way that whispers someone knew exactly what they were doing. Ask yourself this. Who inside the palace would understand those systems well enough to move money without setting off alarms? Exactly. These weren't random accounts. They were transitional holding funds. Temporary staging points before money reached its final destination. The kind of place no outsider would ever think to look. But someone with proximity, access, and confidence might. And here's the contradiction that stunned investigators. Publicly, Meghan was positioning herself as financially independent. Privately, internal logs suggested repeated overlaps between royal fund discrepancies and external entities connected to post-royal projects. Again, allegedly, carefully worded, but devastating when viewed together. At first, advisors urged caution. It could be coincidence, they said. Optics matter, they warned. The crown survives on restraint. But King Charles wasn't convinced. Because this wasn't just about numbers. It was about trust. About a system built on honor being quietly exploited. And according to insiders, what pushed Charles over the edge wasn't the total amount. It was the intent suggested by the pattern. This wasn't desperation. This was planning. And when Charles demanded a full internal briefing, the room reportedly went silent. Senior aides realized the implications immediately. If this went public, it would fracture what little illusion of reconciliation remained. But if it stayed hidden, the king would be complicit. So he made a choice. Release the footage. Release the context. Let the public connect the dots. And that decision detonated everything. Because when Meghan learned the palace wasn't just releasing video, but quietly preparing financial documentation to back it up, sources say panic set in. Not controlled anger. Not strategic spin. Panic. Phone calls were made. Demands issued. Legal teams mobilized in record time. One insider described it as a house of cards shaking in a sudden wind. And here's the part no one was prepared for. The king wasn't done. Because buried deeper in those records was something far more explosive than missing funds. A link that suggested this trail didn't end where anyone expected. And once that connection surfaced, the palace realized they were dealing with something much bigger than a scandal. They were dealing with a reckoning, and Meghan knew it. What came next wasn't just backlash. It was a full-blown meltdown that forced the palace into its most drastic move yet. And that moment is where everything finally blew wide open. What happens when someone who's always controlled the narrative suddenly loses control? That's exactly what Meghan Markle experienced, according to insiders, the moment she realized the palace wasn't bluffing. Because up until this point, Meghan had been able to spin, redirect, or outright deny anything that painted her in a negative light. PR firms were always ready. Media allies on standby. Social media campaigns, carefully choreographed statements, podcast tiers. She played the game like a master. But this time, there was no script, no glossy photos, no emotional voiceovers. Just footage, facts, dates, financial ledgers, and King Charles, not known for making emotional decisions, standing firm, publicly, for the first time in years. And when Meghan saw what the palace was preparing to release next, documents that aligned with the security footage, timestamps that pointed to intentional misconduct, she reportedly exploded. Sources inside Montecito describe a scene of sheer chaos. Phone calls, frantic and loud. Legal teams on Zoom by midnight. Staffers pulled from their homes in the middle of the night. One insider described it as the moment the brand cracked. Another said, she wasn't trying to defend herself. She was trying to stop it. Because here's the truth. Once the palace made the first move, Meghan no longer held the leash on public perception. The royal family, for once, had beaten her to the press. And that wasn't just a loss of reputation, it was a loss of power. According to those close to the situation, Meghan threatened lawsuits. She sent cease and desist letters. She even allegedly tried calling senior courtiers herself. Something she hadn't done in over a year. But no one responded. The palace had gone quiet. Dead quiet. And it was that silence, not the footage, not the documents, not even the headlines, that hit hardest. Because silence, from the royal family, isn't weakness. It's a warning. Insiders say King Charles gave one final internal directive. The time for discretion has passed. He wasn't just trying to shame her. He was trying to protect the crown. And so, on the heels of Meghan's outburst, and with the world already reeling from the footage, the palace decided to release something even more devastating. The final ledger. A single document tying everything together. A clear, concise summary of financial movement, pointing not just to misuse, but to personal benefit. And once that ledger was made public, that's when everything, reputation, alliances, silence, shattered in real time. But that's not even the end. Because now, it's not just the public demanding answers. It's law enforcement. And what happens next could rewrite everything we thought we knew about the Sussex exit. The emotional payoff, final reflection, and call to action. So now we know. What began as a quiet whisper behind palace doors has exploded into something unstoppable, a royal reckoning in full public view. For the first time in years, the crown didn't hold back. No carefully worded statement. No strategic silence. Just raw truth, dropped like a thunderclap. And aimed directly at Meghan Markle. And the fallout? Unprecedented. The footage, once buried in security archives, showed something more than a breach of protocol. It hinted at intent. Access used for gain. Privilege transformed into an open door. And the ledger? That one document spoke louder than any press conference ever could. But let's take a breath. Let's remember where this all started. A wedding that captivated the world. A biracial American actress marrying into a centuries-old monarchy. Hope. Change. A new chapter. For a moment, it felt like history had turned a corner. People cheered. People believed. And now, we're looking at allegations of betrayal at the highest level. Financial manipulation. Calculated silence. And a reaction so intense, so volatile, it suggests one thing. Someone never thought this would come to light. It's not just about Meghan. It's about the institution, the public trust, the thousands of people who donate, support, believe in the causes tied to the royal family. This scandal didn't just put money at risk. It put faith at risk. And that's something far more difficult to recover. But here's the hardest truth. If Meghan hadn't fought so hard to shape her own narrative, if she hadn't played the media game with such precision, maybe the palace wouldn't have needed to respond like this. Maybe the king wouldn't have felt compelled to take the nuclear route. Maybe this would have been settled quietly, behind closed doors. But when silence gets weaponized, it eventually turns against you. And now, Meghan is facing the one force she can't spin away: receipts, footage, numbers, records, reality. So what now? What's next? Insiders say this may only be the beginning. That more footage exists. That other files are being cross-referenced. That the royal family, once content to never complain, never explain, may have just learned how powerful the truth can be when dropped all at once. And Meghan? She's gone dark. No podcast statement. No Instagram post. Just silence.